All right, ladies and gentlemen, in today's news headlines, the lead pipe issues in Chicago. We're going to get into it. This is What's the 411 News. Let's go.
Welcome back to What's the 411 News, where we bring you news observation, interpretation, and news commentary from an FBA and BGR perspective. Let's get it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What's the 411 News. We appreciate y'all coming in. We are live also on Spaces, all right? X or Twitter X Spaces. We are live right now, all right? So if you want to check us out and listen to us on Twitter Spaces, you can go to at WT4, the number 4, news, all right? That's at capital W, capital T, the number 4, and the word news. We are live right now. Okay. So in the news today, Chicago's lead problem isn't going away anytime soon. All right. And so we're going to get into what's going on with the lead problem in Chicago. All right. Let's get into it. So, once again, Chicago's lead problem isn't going away anytime soon. All right. Earlier this month, there was a deadline for water utilities across the country to submit a survey of lead pipes in their systems to the Environmental Protection Agency. The first step in the Biden administration's ambitious plan to replace all the remaining lead service lines in the country over the course of a decade. All right. But the accounting of the water delivery system in Chicago and the agency's response to it shows that the goal will not be met. The EPA is giving Chicago, which has more lead pipes than any other city in the country, until 2047 to finish replacing them all. All right. And so, before we continue on, it's kind of interesting, kind of funny how this is Biden's so-called or the Biden administration's ambitious plan to replace all the remaining lead lines, but yet it seems like the real plan is to give some type of courtesy to all the illegal aliens. So I wonder how this is really going to work out. And then another thing comes to mind, as they say they're giving them, the EPA is giving until Chicago, giving Chicago until 2047 to finish replacing those lead pipes. Will those jobs be given to all the illegal aliens that were secretly ushered into Chicago? All right. So let's continue on. That's decades, 2047. We're in 2024, right? So that literally is about 23. Let me see. No, we're 2024. That's 23 years. That's a couple of decades, right? So that's generations of children and adults consuming lead contaminated water. Okay, according to Shakina Perry, a Chicagoland based senior policy advocate with the Natural Resources Defense Council. All right. They told the news source earlier this year about the EPA's generous timeline. It's incomprehensible to tell a resident that they need to wait that long for safe drinking water. All right. Lead's devastating impact. Lead is a powerful neurotoxin and there is no safe amount to consume in water. So make sure you get that straight. There is no safe amount, not one. No safe amount to consume in water. The effects of lead exposure, which can cause developmental and behavioral problems, as well as fertility issues, amongst other issues, tend to be worse for people who are already experiencing other social disadvantages, such as poverty. All right. Combined with the fact that lead water infrastructure is often found in cities like Chicago. Lead exposure is an environmental justice issue that disproportionately affects Black and brown communities. I hate that Black and brown word or a combination. All right. And before we continue on, I remember when in Michigan, when they had the lead water issue, and I remember Dick Gregory mentioning that Michigan wasn't the only place that had some issues. And, after he said that, it got real quiet about any other cities mentioning too many water issues like lead and stuff like that. I think there was some issues was it the lack of water in Jackson, Mississippi? Or was it they also had some issues with lead in their water as well? Right. And then we had, what's his name? Mr. West, who created those water machines that will give out fresh, clean water. Moses West, yeah. So remember, he had brought some machines or a machine to the city of Jackson to give them some fresh water instead of what they was experiencing. I don't know if there was some broken pipes in Jackson, Mississippi, or there was lead in the water, but nonetheless, Moses West went on and did his thing and brought some fresh, clean water to Mississippi. So again, like I said, Dick Gregory even mentioned there's more cities than just in Michigan, right? So now we're talking about, and this wasn't like highly publicized about Chicago. So there seemed like there needs to be a lot of lawsuits handed out in a lot of cities. Okay. So Chicago has an estimated 400,000 lead service lines, the most in the US, which connect larger cast iron or ductile steel distribution lines with the privately owned plumbing system inside a home or apartment building. Okay. And real quick, let's go back where it says the effects of lead exposure, which can cause developmental and behavioral problems. So, another thing that crosses my mind is I wonder if this was all a setup or a planned thing to have this stuff in Chicago because they're saying it's the most uh, lead pipes than any other city, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm wondering if this was a whole setup because if it's giving you developmental and behavioral problems, and you had all the issues that was going on there, it makes you wonder, right? It makes you wonder what's really going on, and was this really all a planned out thing to continue to let these lead pipes continue to operate. All right. All that lead contaminated water is by no means evenly distributed. One recent study conducted in Chicago found that an astonishingly high percentage of children under the age of 6, the age group at the greatest risk of long-term complications from lead poisoning, are exposed to lead in drinking water, nearly 70%. All right. The extent of lead contamination of tap water in Chicago is disheartening. It's not something we should be seeing in 2024. The study's lead author, Benjamin Hayunth, I think that's how you pronounce it, an assistant professor at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, said in a statement in March, that's the statement he said, that the extent of lead contamination of tap water in Chicago is disheartening. It's not something we should be seeing in 2024. All right. Definitely not. So while Chicago has a significant black and brown, there goes that black and brown nonsense again, population on the whole, all that lead contaminated water is by no means evenly distributed. A significant concentration of lead service lines are located on the primarily black South Side. The fix, removing lead from water systems, is obvious, but it tends to never be all that quick or straightforward. And there are other cities, which I said that Gregory was mentioning some years back, by the way, and there are other cities with a large amount of lead too, including New York. 100,000 lead service lines, and Cleveland, 235,000 lead service lines. The EPA has had shifting formula for setting the deadline, for cities with the most work to do when it comes to removing lead from the water system. And I'm going to repeat that one again. The EPA has had a shifting formula for setting the deadline for cities with the most work to do when it comes to removing lead from the water system. So the EPA has a shifting formula. They shift and for setting deadlines, huh? Imagine that. So the EPA's initial formula for granting extended deadlines to cities with the most work to do would have put New York at 14 years, Cleveland at 27 years, and given Chicago fully 42 years to do all the work, according to an analysis by Policy Innovation. Thanks to a recent revision to the formula, however, New York is now on the 10-year timeline, and Cleveland and Chicago saw their deferred timelines cut roughly in half. Yeah, okay. So that's Flint, Michigan, what we was talking about. Flint's long journey. The long-running effort to replace every lead and stainless steel service line in Flint, Michigan, shows just how arduous this kind of undertaking can be. The city has completed around 30,000 service line replacements in 7 years at a cost of $100 million. And while the work initially moved at a rapid clip, it has ground nearly to a halt in recent years. With the finish line approaching, difficulties around finding remaining lines and also with getting the necessary permissions to check publicly owned service lines that run under privately owned front yards have emerged. I'm going to read that one again, so that one will stick. With the finish line approaching, difficulties around finding remaining lines, that's remaining lead service lines, and also with getting the necessary permissions to check publicly owned service lines that run under privately owned front yards have emerged. There are bound to be similar hangups in Chicago as well, with access complicated by the fact that it's predominantly a city of renters, not homeowners. I don't know what that's got to be an issue. That's ridiculous to say that. Currently, a tenant is not allowed to permit access for service line work. Only the owner of a building is. With a significant immigrant population now living in the South Side, there is also the concern that some residents will avoid anyone knocking on a door about lead pipe removal in order to avoid the risk of deportation. Are they hinting that somebody will win the election over the other one? Because only one of the candidates for presidency is looking at deportation while the other one isn't. So are they cluing us in on something? Kind of on the sly. So then there's the question of cost. While Flint is on the hook to pay for new service lines thanks to a court ruling that mandates the lead pipe removal program. In many cases, Chicagoans will be on the hook for the cost. some low-income homeowners will be able to get lead lines swapped out for free. But those who don't qualify will have to pay between $15,000 and $40,000. So what do you guys think about that one? They're looking for Chicago for 2047 for them to be finalized with getting rid of all those lead service lines. New York has issues, Cleveland has issues, and I will add, even though it doesn't mention it, I'm sure every state, a city in every state, if not more cities in every state, has some type of lead issues somewhere that's not being spoken upon. And you're going to have a bunch of kids when they become grown who are exposed, and adults who are exposed to it if they don't purchase bottled water, if you will. There's going to be a lot of issues, a lot of health issues coming down the line. And like I said, it was behavioral and developmental. So you got kids trying to grow up and get developed, brain developed and all that. And then some of them are going to be exposed to that lead. So you guys let me know what you think about this one, man. Yeah. There's a price to pay. There's somebody that needs to pay for what's going on. And Brandon Johnson, Chicago. I don't know if he's taking certain priorities over the other, but he needs to be under the microscope once again. All right. So with that being said, I appreciate y'all. Let us know what you think about this one. This is What's the 411 News. And we out of here. Peace.
Welcome back to What's the 411 News, where we bring you news observation, interpretation, and news commentary from an FBA and BGR perspective. Let's get it.